Serafina Delacroix had never once in her life asked the world to notice her. She woke up every morning in her small room at the edge of the Crescent Vale Pact territory, made herself a cup of tea, and walked 30 minutes to the administrative hall where she worked. She filed reports. She organized records. She kept the entire system running, without anyone thinking too hard about who was doing it. And at the end of every day, she walked home the same way she had come, made herself dinner, and went to sleep. It was a quiet life. Most people would have called it a small life. Serafina called it hers, and she protected it carefully. She had learned early that the world did not offer much to girls like her. Her mother had passed away when she was 9 years old, a gentle woman with soft hands and a warm laugh, gone too soon, and mourned too briefly by a husband who remarried within 2 years. Her father was not a cruel man. He was simply a distracted one. He had a new family now, new children, a new life that did not have much room in it for a quiet daughter who reminded him of a woman he was trying to forget. So Serafina had raised herself. She had found her comfort in books, in the rhythm of organized work, and in the simple satisfaction of being competent at things. She did not need applause. She did not need to be seen. She had built something steady inside herself, something no one had helped her build, and therefore no one could take away. She was 23 years old, and she thought she had made peace with the life she had. Then the Alpha King came to Crescent Vale, and everything she thought she understood began to unravel. His name was Alaric Voss, and he ruled the 5 territories with the kind of authority that made rooms go quiet before he entered them. He was not cruel in the way that small men are cruel. He was simply enormous, in presence, in power, in the absolute certainty with which he moved through the world. He had been Alpha King since he was 25, had held the 5 territories together through 2 political crises and 1 attempted uprising, and had done it all with a cold precision that people mistook for confidence, but was really something closer to the habit of never needing anyone. He arrived at Crescent Vale on a Thursday for a routine territory inspection. He had done dozens of these. He expected nothing unusual. Serafina was carrying a tall stack of binders down the main hallway of the administrative building when he walked around the corner without looking where he was going. The collision was immediate and total. Every binder hit the floor. Papers scattered in every direction across the polished stone. The 2 members of his security detail stepped forward instinctively. The 3 other staff members in the hallway froze. Alaric looked down at the papers. Then he looked at her, briefly, the way you look at something that has become an inconvenience. He said nothing. He stepped over the scattered documents and continued walking. His head of staff, a kind older man named Ferris, crouched down immediately and began helping gather the papers. Serafina thanked him quietly. She collected everything herself, on her knees on the floor, while the hallway slowly pretended to return to normal around her. She did not cry. She had stopped crying over things like this a long time ago. What she felt instead was something quieter and more durable than hurt. It was the familiar feeling of being someone that people looked through rather than at. She had felt it so many times that she almost did not notice it anymore. She stacked the binders neatly, stood up, straightened her jacket, and continued on her way. She did not think she would ever see him again. She was wrong. The formal pack dinner was held 2 nights later in the great hall of Crescent Vale's main lodge. Long tables, candlelight, the senior pack members in their best clothes, the Alpha King seated at the head of the room like a permanent fixture. Serafina was there because attendance was expected of all administrative staff. She sat near the back, ate quietly, and planned to leave the moment it was acceptable to do so. She was reaching for her water glass when the bond hit her. There is no clean way to describe what the mate bond feels like when it activates. It is not subtle. It moves through the body like a sound too deep to hear, like gravity shifting by 1 degree, like something that was missing suddenly and irreversibly present. Every shifter knew the stories. Very few were prepared for the reality. Serafina's hand stopped moving. She sat completely still. Across the room, Alaric Voss had gone equally still. He was already looking at her, not the way he had looked at her in the hallway, over and past her, but directly at her, with an expression she had never seen on a powerful man's face before. He looked, for just a moment, like someone who had been surprised by something larger than himself. The table nearest to him noticed first. Then the ripple moved outward. By the time Alaric stood up and crossed the room toward her, half the hall had gone quiet. He stopped in front of her. He was taller up close. She looked up at him steadily and waited. What he said next, he would spend a very long time wishing he could take back. "This is not the right time," he said. His voice was low, controlled, clearly intended only for her. "I have a political arrangement being finalized. I cannot allow this to interfere." Serafina looked at him for 3 full seconds. She looked at the careful blankness of his face, the tightness around his jaw, the way he held himself like a man managing a situation rather than standing in front of a person. She recognized this. She had been managed her whole life. "I agree with you," she said. "It is clearly a mistake." She pushed her chair back, stood up, and walked out of the hall. Not quickly. She did not want to give anyone the satisfaction of watching her hurry. She walked at a normal pace, through the double doors, out into the cold night air, and kept walking until the sounds of the hall faded behind her, and she was alone under a wide, dark sky. She stood there for a while, breathing slowly. Above her, the stars were very bright. She told herself she was fine, and because she had a great deal of practice at telling herself this, and then making it true through sheer effort, she almost was. She requested a transfer to the archive outpost in the Eastern Territory 2 weeks later. The outpost was a quiet place, a large stone building full of historical records, staffed by 4 people, located in a valley far from the noise of territory politics. It was exactly the kind of place Serafina was good at making into a home. She settled in. She learned the archive system. She organized records that had not been properly cataloged in 40 years. She made tea every morning, and walked in the valley in the evenings, and told herself, with increasing conviction, that she was happy. She received a letter from the Alpha King's office, 4 months after her transfer. It was formal, written on official stationery, signed by Alaric Voss himself. It acknowledged that his words at the pack dinner had been poorly chosen. It expressed regret for any distress caused. She read it twice. She appreciated the grammar. She put it in her desk drawer and did not respond. A second letter arrived 6 weeks later. This one was not on official stationery. It was handwritten, in penmanship that suggested a man more accustomed to digital communication than pen and paper. The handwriting was slightly uneven, which she found unexpectedly human. He wrote that he had been wrong. Not wrong in a polished political way, wrong in the plain, uncomfortable way that costs something to admit. He wrote that he had stood in that hallway and watched her collect documents off the floor alone, and told himself it was not his responsibility, and that he had been wrong about that too. He wrote that the word he had chosen, mistake, had been the worst thing he had ever said aloud, because it was not what he had meant, and it was not what was true, and he had said it anyway, because he was afraid of something he did not yet know how to handle. He said he did not expect a response. He said he simply needed her to know. Serafina read that letter 4 times. She put it in the same drawer. She was not punishing him. She was not being cruel. She was simply not ready, and she had lived long enough with herself to know the difference between being not ready and being afraid, and to respect the first one while she waited for it to pass. The blood moon came on a Tuesday in late October. It was the rarest event in the shifter calendar, a celestial alignment that occurred once every 100 years, when the moon turned deep red at the horizon, and the boundary between the natural world and something older became, for a few hours, very thin. Serafina was working late at the archive, as she often did, sitting at her desk with a lamp on and a cup of cold tea beside her, when the quality of the light in the room changed. It is difficult to describe. The lamp did not go out. The room did not darken, but the light shifted from yellow to silver, and the air became very still, and the woman who stood in the doorway of the archive had not come through any door that Serafina had heard open. She was tall. Her hair was silver white and moved slightly, though there was no wind. Her eyes were the color of moonlight on still water. She looked at Serafina the way that no one had ever looked at her, not with evaluation, not with the quick assessment people did when deciding how much attention to pay, but with a deep, settled recognition, as if she had been waiting a long time to look at her directly. Serafina pulled out the chair across from her desk. "Please sit down," she said. Her voice was steady. She would be surprised by herself later. The moon goddess sat. What she told Serafina over the next hour was not a story Serafina had ever been told, but it was, she slowly understood, the story she had been living without knowing it. Her mother had not been an ordinary pack member. Her mother's bloodline was ancient, traced back through generations of careful concealment to the first moon-blessed queen, a woman who had existed before the 5 territories had names, who had made the original sacred agreement between the shifter world and the divine. The bloodline had been hidden deliberately, moved through quiet, unremarkable lives, protected by its very invisibility. It had come, finally, to Serafina. She was not the overlooked daughter of a distracted man. She was the end of a long, carefully protected line. And the reason she had been kept quiet and unseen was not because she was unimportant, but because she was too important to risk. You were never invisible, the moon goddess said simply. You were being kept safe. She told Serafina that the mate bond between her and Alaric Voss was not an accident. The Alpha King's line had ruled the 5 territories for 2 centuries, but the territories had been slowly losing their balance. Too much power concentrated in one kind of authority, the old sacred agreements fading from memory, the connection between the pack world and its deeper roots growing thin. The moon goddess had known, for a long time, what was needed. Not a political queen, not someone shaped by power and accustomed to it. Someone who had built her character entirely without it. Someone who knew how to hold herself together when nothing around her offered support. Someone exactly like Serafina. The bond chose you, the moon goddess said, because I chose you. A long time before either of you were born. Serafina sat with this for a long moment. That is a great deal to absorb, she said. The moon goddess smiled. You have time. She returned to Crescent Vale on a morning in early December, without announcement. The sky was pale and cold, and the territory felt different to her now. Not smaller, but more familiar, in a way that had nothing to do with memory. It felt like somewhere she was supposed to be. Alaric found out she was back within an hour. She had not tried to hide her arrival, but she had not announced it either. He came to the administrative hall, the old one, where she had first worked, where the hallway collision had happened. Because he had learned, in the months of her absence, that Serafina returned to places that mattered, and he had learned, more slowly, how to pay that kind of attention to another person. She was standing by the window when he walked in. The winter light was behind her. She looked exactly like herself, which was the only way he could think to describe it now, as though the stillness and the steadiness he had originally failed to recognize as strength had always been visible, and he had simply not been looking properly. He had prepared something to say. He was a man who had managed territories and negotiations and crises. He understood the architecture of difficult conversations. But standing in front of her, everything he had prepared dissolved, and what was left was the plain truth, which was easier in the end. I walked past you on this floor, he said. You were on your knees collecting papers I had knocked over, and I stepped around you and kept going. I told myself it was not something I needed to address. He paused. I have thought about that moment more than any decision I have made in the last 2 years. Serafina listened without expression, the way she listened to everything, completely, without rushing him. I am not here to ask you to forgive me quickly, he said. I am here because I want you to know that I understand what I did, and what I said at that dinner, and what it cost you to walk out the way you did. And I want the chance, not the assumption, the chance, to be someone worth standing beside you. Serafina was quiet for a moment. I know who I am now, she said. I did not know before. That changes things. She looked at him directly. I am not the woman from the hallway floor. I need you to understand that before you decide what you are asking for. I know, he said. I am asking to begin from wherever you are standing right now. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once, slowly. It was not forgiveness yet. It was not a promise. It was a door, opened a small amount, by a woman who had built every good thing in her life with her own hands, and intended to be very careful with this one. Outside the window, the winter sky was beginning to lighten. Somewhere above the clouds, though neither of them could see it, the moon was still there. It always had been,